Hello, listeners. Hi, my name is Madhavi, and I'm so happy to have you on UppTalk. You have come to the right place if you want to learn about IT and do really cool things with your hands. We are not just another IT company when I say UppTalk. Think of us as your learning partner dedicated to helping you reach your full potential. We have top notch hands on courses to help you build your business, whether you are new to technology or want to move up in your current job. Let's look around this as our first step towards learning.
Here can you go to the overview, page number 5. Let it be there. Now, can anyone explain to me what is happening on the like cell part? Anyone? What is happening on the SAM? There is one SAML request will be there, and then some response will be there. SAML, I mean one user is trying to access the application means. The notification will go to the service provider, then the service provider based on the information about IDP is configured on SP, information about SP is configured on IDP. Based on that, SP will create a SAML request and pass the SAML request to the IDP. IDP will accept the SAML request because SP information is already configured on IDP. And then it will do the authentication. Once authentication is successful, it will create a SAML response and send the SAML response to the application. Like certificate, it will be there. And then cell subject will be there and optional attributes also will be there. I guys like the SAML. You're understanding the SAML, the same flow. It will be a little bit different. The same flow. It will also same with your auth, but in a little bit different kind of step will be there. That is what we are going to see now. Now here in OAuth in SAML, what are the parties are there in SAML guys? How many parties and what are the parties are there in SAML? Any idea guys? What are the two parties available in the SAML? Service provider and identity provider. Exactly, there are two parties are available in the SAML. One is service provider, one is identity provider. How many workflows are there? It's been initiated as a song, IDP initiated as a soup. Because of two parties are involving, there are two workflows. Are there guys? That is why it is showing, that is why it is having two workflows. Now here in OAuth there are four parties are involved if you scroll down a bit down. How many you can ignore the user agent? Ignore user agent is not parties in the OAuth. But we can say you could see that there are four parties. What are that? User or resource owner. User or resource owner means it's a normal user basically. The normal user who is trying to access the application. Client. If you take a Zoom meeting, then Zoom meeting is the client application because that is the application. You are seeing it in the visible in the screen. And that will be considered as the client application. Then who is the authorization server? Authorization server is nothing but in SAML. What? Who is the authorization server? We can able to easily guess it in SAML. There is IDP is there. The same concept. In OAuth, we can call the IDP as an authorization server or AES. Here, Pinker is going to act as an authorization server, then resource server. The resource server is known as, that is, the target applications or like who is going to create a request and then who is going to create a AP flows. Everything will be who is going to validate the token, whatever we are having it in this particular application. Basically, understood. Understood, guys. Sorry, here, what we are going to do. We are going to like, for example, these four parties, the like the communication between these four parties conclude the oath. I mean that is a communication between the two parties that is considered as a SAML. Like the same workflow, but in a different kind of a manner that has been extended into four different parties. That is nothing, kind of a nothing different will be there only in the like format. Whatever we are putting the request and in the response. Now tell me what is the format for request and response in this particular, what we can say in SAML. Any idea, guys? No, what is the format? We have seen it in the SAL request and response, guys. In request, we had SP configured on IDP. No. I am not asking the information and all. Just what is the format of SAML request and response? How the format looks like? It is XML format. That is what it will get changed in the OAuth in a SAML. It is a XML format. In OAuth, the request will be in the like a API call in API call with the query parameters. We saw one query parameter in the ampersand. We will have one condition, the same concept. Here in OAuth, the request will be having URL with the query parameters. All the conditions will be there. And then in SAML, that is a response. That is also in the XML format, but here it is in the JSON format. That is JBOT JSON Web Tokens. That tokens is already predefinedly. It is an encrypted one. There is no difference in that. Understood, guys? That is a difference. But the request, who is going to access the application and who is requesting the like for the authorization request, and then authentication will be done by the Ping array. That is the authorization, and then Ping array will create a response also after successful authentication. Now here, if you go back to the diagram, scroll up a little bit. That is the normal OAuth workflow, like a normal SAML workflow. We saw similarly normal OAuth workflow. Can you scroll up a little bit? We will see this one. No, scroll up, sorry. Here you could see the user is trying to access the client. That is a Zoom meeting. Zoom meeting is the real-time example for OAuth, guys. We can take it as a Zoom meeting also. That is not at all a problem here. The user is trying to access the application. The user is trying to access the application. That is a client. In which user agent we are trying? That is the Chrome browser. Chrome browser is the user agent. And then what happens? The client will send a notification. Hey, resource server. One user is trying to access application. What is the next step? Then resource server. Obviously, authorization server information is configured on the resource server. Authorization information is configured on the resource server like how the IDP information configured on SP. The same concept, authorization server information is configured on the resource server. Then what resource server will do? It will create in SAML, the SP will create a SAML request. Here the resource server will create authorization request. The resource server will create authorization request and send the authorization request and include all the information in the request about the authorization server. It will include all the information about the authorization server in the request and pass the request back to the authorization server. This is request means it's a API call. It's a API call with the query parameters. Then authorization server will receive the request and then it will check all the parameters are there or not. If all the parameters is there means then the authorization server will accept, it will accept the API call. Once it is accepting the API call, then the Ping parent will throw the login screen in the browser. The user will have the credentials. The same concept, the Ping parent will validate the credentials. Once the credentials is validated successfully, then the Ping parent will create the token. In SAML, it is going to create a SAM response. Here, the Ping parent will create a token and then it will attach the attributes, optional attributes. It will be there and then pass the token to the resource server. In SAML, it is going to attach the SAM subject, attach the certificate, and then it will also attach the optional attribute. In token, there is no concept called subject or any kind of a mandatory attribute. Whatever the attribute we are sending, everything is optional only in Auth. In SAM, that is mandatory. Here also, we can able to sign the access token, that is a JWT token, by using certificate, but that is also an optional. Then you can ask me one question. Hey Karthik, you are saying this kind of access token and as well as this particular access token we are generating, and then you are saying that certificate is also not mandatory. You are saying certificate is optional and then attributes are also optional. Then how the resource server is going to validate the token? That is what another step is coming on. That is the second step. Once the authorization server sends the token back to the resource server, then the resource server needs to validate what it will do. Either they can use a subject, that is one option. Either they can use a subject or they can use another, a peer call. The resource server will do a Ping Federate, will ask Ping Federate, hey Ping Federate, now I got the token which you sent me in the first step. Now, can you tell me whether this token is valid or not? The resource server is doing the second call, that is the validation API call. First one is the authorization request to create the token. The second one is the validation one to validate whether the token is correct or not. The resource server is doing the validation API call to check whether the token is valid or not. Here validation API call input is token, output is it will show the token is valid or not. That is known as the validation API call. Understand? Now can anyone just explain to me what is going on in the OAuth? What is the first step? Here, let me explain again one more time. The first step, user is trying to access the application, that is the client. The client will send an application to the resource server. Then the resource server. Obviously, authorization server information is configured on resource server. Based on that, it will send the API call back to the authorization server. That means the authorization request API call. Then obviously information about the authorization server is included in the API call also. Once it is accepted, then the authorization server will throw the login state. Authentication will happen after successful authentication. It will generate the token, that is a JWT token, as a response. Then it may sign the token, or we can also ignore the signing and then send the token back to the resource server. Then the resource server will have to validate the token. They will be sending one more API call validation. API call input is token, output is to check whether the token is valid or not. Now can you go to the text part? I will show you. This is the step section. First one. Can you go to the note part? To swap on here. What is that workflow? Auth workflow. The first step. First step, what is happening on? Like the user accessing the application notification going from the client to the resource server. No, just put it in the arrow mark section. The first step, just put arrow mark. Now, notification will send from the client to the resource server. Just mention resource server as a RS. Then just put another arrow mark. RS information about AS is already configured on RS. Configured on. AS will create authorization request and send the request API call to the AS. That is the first step. Authorization request API call and then send the request API call to the AS. Then AS will receive the request and then it will accept the request. AS will receive it and then it will accept the request. Resist the request and then it will accept it. And it will throw the login screen to the user. Accept it. AS will do the authentication. Basically, just AS will do the authentication. That is the authentication. Then, once validated successfully, it is creating a response as an access token and pass the token to the AS. Now pass the token to the AS. Now the second one. This is the second API call. Just put the second API call. AS needs to validate the token. It is sending the token, it is doing the validation. API call to the AS. Input is token, output is token, is valid or not. RS sending a validation API call to the AS. RS sending the validation API call to the AS. That means input is token, output is token. Output is token, is valid or not. That is all. Here in the first API call, what is the input? Authorization request API call. That is the input. Input means all the information about ACE will be there in the request API call. And then once it is received, it will accept it and then output is user authentication will happen. Then the token is the output. Then second input is token, output is token is valid or not. Whatever you got it as output in the first API call, it will send it as an input in the second API call. First API call input is authorization request with all the information about the ACE should be there. Then authentication will happen. That is the output. And then once authentication happened, it will create a token. That is the output. That output is acting as an input in the second API call. You don't want to use the second API call. The application team does not want to use the second call to validate the token. They can validate the token instead of an API call. They can validate the token by using the certificate. Here in Ping. In OAuth, the certificate validation is not mandatory. It's not even useful. 99% of the application, they won't use the certificate validation for the OAuth. They will use the validation API call to validate the token basically. And then we can also send the attributes like in the SAML responser, first name, last name. Here also we can send, but those are all like options that doesn't matter for the OAuth. Only they need token. If the user information is there, they can use it, but that doesn't that like it won't matter to the application. Only the token and then validation of the token. Obviously, when they do the validation, it will give if the token is valid. The output is it will show the token is valid. It will give a success response and then it will also show what are the attributes in the token. That is the output of the validation API call. It won't give it in the certificate validation. Only with the validation API call we can able to see this particular attributes, whatever we are passing into the token. And then it will also show that token is valid. And then it will also give when the token is going to expire, because this token will have expiration time. The default time is 60 minutes. Sorry, it's 120 minutes, 2 hours. We can also send like 60 minutes also. We can also give 180 minutes. That is the application requirement. But don't give more than 1 day hours. 12 hours or 8 hours or 1 day. Those all we should not give it. Maximum you can give for 4 hours. Don't give more than that. The token, we will be saying that. When we do the practical session, we will see that. Understood, guys? Now understood what we have discussed till now. The normal auth workflow. Understood the normal auth workflow. This is how the normal auth will work. Now, can you able to see it, guys? This also looks like the SAML workflow. Only difference is that SAML is having the mandatory validation for the SAML subject and as well as certificate, but here nothing like that is not it. That is why the SAML is considered as a secure one and OAuth is considered as a less secure one because of the certificate usage only. Understood? Here you could see. The next one is you can just put enter. Now here we have seen the SAML 2 workflows. Now it just have to come out of the OAuth workflow. In SAM2 workflows, IDP initiator, SP initiator, because they're all having 2 parties. Here, how many parties are there in OAuth? How many workflows will be there? One related to user agent, one related to client service and to service. That is the 4 parties. Then how many workflows will be there? There will be 4 workflows. We cannot call it as a workflow here in OAuth. We will be calling it as a grant types. OAuth grant types. Just put OAuth grant types. There are 4 grant types out there in the OAuth. Each one will have a different perspective. And each one will have a different workflows. We will see all the 4. Even in practical also, we will see all the 4. Next 3 days are coming from Monday. And next 3 days, we will be configuring this and testing these workflows. These grant types, OAuth grant types. First one, authorization code grant type. Authorization code grant type is the first one. It will also similar to the normal OAuth workflow, but that is one difference will be there. The second one, implicit grant type. Authorization code implicit. The third one is client credentials. Grant type client space credentials. Fourth one and final one is resource owner password credential grant type. Resource owner password credentials grant type. That means RPC resource owner password credentials. In the bracket or OPC. Client credentials in the bracket put CC. Before getting started with these things, can you open the Chrome browser? Can you try to access the Zoom meeting? I will show you that I have mentioned. Authorization request K, pay call. Authorization request K, pay call is in the front end, guys. We can able to see that K, pay call. Anyone can able to see. Even the normal user also can able to see it in the normal browser. Just click on sign in. No. Can you go back? No, I think it is going as a different one. And can you put it on Chrome browser? Sorry, Google Authentication, because that is the one which is passing it. Wait a minute. Can you copy in the top? And can you copy the URL and put it in the Notepad++? This is known as the authorization request, KPay call. Authorization request KPay call. KPay call is nothing but it is just a URL. It is just an endpoint. It is just an endpoint. They are going to try the endpoint by using the get method. This is a get method or using the post method. These are the two things are there in the API flow. Here you could see can able to increase the context. Anyone can able to see that URL is like, I cannot be able to see properly. Anyways, that's the starting line is there. Up to, oh, I need to see. I need to come closer to the monitor screen. I'm having 37-inch screen, but still. That's fine, guys. That's fine. It's fine. Here you could see that up to auth/auth is there. Up to that one. That is the auth URL. That is the auth URL. For us, Ping threaded URL will be there. Ping threaded auth URL will be different. That is the authorization request URL. And then after that question mark, they have given the response. Underscore type is equal to code. That is related to the grant type. You are going to use it. Authorization code grant type will have a different response type, and then implicit will have a different response type. Then the client ID is there. In SAMA, there is a concept called entity ID. What is that entity ID, guys? What is that SAMA entity ID? That is what we discussed there. That is the most important concept. What is that SAMA entity ID? It is a unique ID for the, and there are two entity ID, one for IDP, one for ESP, to check whether it is identity provider or service provider. Here also we will be using one unique ID called client ID. There is no two client ID here, only one client ID, that will be client ID for our Ping threaded. We will be creating the client ID. The client ID will get different for each and every application. Application 1 means it will have a client ID application 1. And then application 2 means it will have a different client ID in the Ping threaded configuration to identify which kind of application we are accessing into the OAuth. That is the client ID. This information, the client ID information, the redirect URI is there. That is a redirect URL. In SAM, there is a ACS URL. There is a concept called ACS URL. What ACS URL? After successful authentication, the URL, it is redirecting the user to that particular URL. That is known as the ACS URL. Here in Ping OAuth, we can call the same URL as a redirect underscore URI. The same thing. After successful authentication, it is going to redirect to that particular URL. That is known as the redirect underscore URI in OAuth, like a ACS URL in the SAML. Here, whatever we are doing, response type, that is what we are going to use as a grant type. That is mandatory. One grant type we need to use as a minimum, and then the client ID is mandatory. This information we are all configuring from our side. Based on that, they are doing it. The application is doing the request and giving an input in the query parameters. If you change any one of the value here, the here autism server is the Google. It will reject the request. The client ID, can you remove one value in the client ID and then copy this URL and put it there in the browser? Just delete any one of the values there. and then copy this and put it there in the same browser. Here you could see what client was not found. Invalid client ID. That is the error. It is throwing invalid client ID. Now, can you go back and can you change something there in the redirect UI? The redirect UI is there. Can you change something that third line redirect underscore URI starting of the third line? Sorry, starting of the fourth line. Fourth line. No, not there. In the starting in the left hand side. You could see, yes. Can you remove from there some value? Maybe Zoomus is there. Just take out Zoom. Copy this and put it there. It will show invalid redirect UI. All the things it's mandatory. If the Ping Federate, similarly with the Ping Federate, does not have any kind of a, it is showing invalid records. I think you deleted all the things. That's fine. Here, if you give the redirect, if the application team is sharing the redirect UI, it's a wrong value, means it will throw an error. If they put the client ID, it's a wrong. That is also, will the Ping Federate it won't accept it. It will throw one error. That is known as the authorization request, a PIC. Also, if you log into the correct one, it will create a token and then the token will be available. And then you will log into the application. That is known as the OAuth workflow. Here in OAuth, any one of the grant types, we need to use it as a must either authorization, core grant type, or implicit or client credentials or our OPC method. Let's see what is the authorization core grant type, what is the client credentials, what is implicit, what is OPC. Let's go to the authorization core grant type. Can you just go to the text pad and then type authorization core grant type? In a normal OAuth workflow, there is a two-step process. In a normal OAuth workflow, it's a two-step process. Can you go to the node purpose list text pad? In a normal OAuth workflow, it's a two-step. In an authorization core grant type, it will follow the same kind of a workflow, but it will have one intermediate step. That will be 3 steps. In a normal OAuth workflow, it's a two-step. Sorry guys. In a normal OAuth workflow, it's a two-step process. The first, the authorization core grant type, is a 3-step process. Understood? Shall we go with what is the difference? Why does having an intermediate step? What is that intermediate step? Obviously, like in a second. AP, I call validation. AP, I call in a normal OAuth workflow. In an authorization core grant type, that will take it as in the third API call. The validation API call for authorization core grant type will be done at the third step, validation of that token. Can you go back to the notepad? Here, can you type authorization core grant type? And can you copy the first step up to? Just can you copy the first step here up to as Dusty Authentication? It's the same kind of step, guys. The process is the same. The user is trying to access the application, notification will send to the client. Send from the client to the ask, then information about is authorization service already configured on RSRS. It will create authorization request and authorization request API call and pass it to the authorization server. Then authorization server, what it will do? Authorization server, what it will do, it will it will check the authorization request. If it is correct, it will do the authentication, it will accept it, it will do the authentication, but after successful authentication, in the normal OAuth workflow, it is going to create a token directly. It is going to create a token. That is the normal workflow. But here there is a difference. It is not going to create a token directly. Instead, after successful authentication, it creates access code or temporary code or intermediate code. Can you type it, give the arrow button, arrow mark, and then it is. After successful authentication, it is creating access code which will valid for 60 seconds and pass the access code to the RS. After successful authentication, AES creates the access code which will be valid for 60 seconds and pass the code to the RS. Then in the second step, RS needs to call the token AP. I call with the input as a code and then output will give a token. We will see that. The second API call. The first API call. Instead of creating a token directly authorization server, here it is creating a code which will value for 60 seconds, which will be valid for 60 seconds. Within 60 seconds, the RS needs to do the second API call. That is known as token API call. Here the second one RS will do the token API call. Input is whatever the code which we got in the first step. That is the input. Input is code which we got in the first step. Output as a code. We got it in the first step. Now the Ping Federal will receive the request and then it will check whether the code is valid or not. The Ping Federal means that is a yes. Yes, will receive the token, API call. Will receive the token, API call, and then it will check whether the code is valid or not. Checks the code is valid or not. If it is valid, it will create a token and then pass the token to the RS. It will create a token, then it will pass the token back to the RS. Then the third API call, it's the same thing. That is what the second API call with the normal water flow. Here after just put that the third API call is that a copy the second API call from that particular, like copy this from the RS, that is the validation API call. Either if they don't want to do the third API call, they can do the validation by using the like certificate. Here, what is the difference? Now you can able to see the difference, guys. Their normal water flow, it created a token directly. It creating the token directly in the bottom. The first API call is in the front end. After successful authentication, it will generate a token. Basically, that is a normal water flow. But because that audition request is the front end, it will create a token directly. It will pass a token in the browser itself. Anyone can able to see that token in the browser. Even the normal user also can see the token. If the hacker tried to hack it, they can able to get the token and then hack the token and then they can get into the application. In order to overcome that point, this audition code grant has been introduced, audition code grant type. Instead of creating the token directly, it will create a code, access code, which will be valid. Within 60 seconds, the AS needs to do the second API call, that is a token, a PI call. That is not in the front end. The user cannot be able to see any kind of visibility there because like it is happening, the second API call is happened on the back end. In the back end, what we will do? The AS will send that token, a PI call, input this code and then it will stop it like this, a Ping Federal. I'm having the code which is sending the first step. Can you give me the token after validating this code within 60 seconds? They need to do that. The code is expired means the Ping Federal will reject it. The audition server will reject that one within 60 seconds. They need to be fast. Within 60 seconds, obviously it will be faster, doesn't matter. But that is why this making the hackers means definitely they cannot do it within 60 seconds, even though they got the code, even though they get the code within 60 seconds. They cannot be able to do the second AP I call to get the token. That is why the hackers, if they try to get the code, they cannot be able to get the token in the time. That is why auditions go to the auditions code is considered as a secured way of or most secured way of doing the OAuth. Out of 4 grant types, auditions code grant type is considered as a secured way of doing the OAuth. Now can we able to see the difference between normal OAuth workflow and then the auditions code grant type normal OAuth workflow. It's like a 2-step process here. It's a 3-step process. In normal OAuth workflow, after successful authentication, the authorization server will create a token directly. But here it is not going to create a token. It is going to create the access code, which will be valid for 60 seconds. Then our resource server will have to do the token. AP, I call to get the access token. Input is access code which is generated in the first step. Similarly here, also the validation API call will happen. In auditions code also there is a validation API call again. And then here also, if they don't want to use the validation API, I call the certificate validation. We can do here in auditions code, also we can do the certificate validation. If they don't want the validation API, I call. But anyways, in normal OAuth workflow, it's a 2-step process. In a full workflow, that is the auditions code grant type workflow, it's a 3-step process. Here, first one, the auditions request API, I call input, is whatever the configuration detail will access the input. And then output is authentication will happen, and then access code will get generated. That is the output. The second AP I call, which I already mentioned, in the normal OAuth workflow, whatever the output created in the first step, it is acting as input in the second step. The same way here also, whatever the output is generated in the first AP I call code, it is acting as input in the second API call. That is the token. API call input is code, output is the token will get generated. Then the token is acting as input in the third AP I call to validate the token. Output is token is valid not. This is known as the authorization code grant type. Understood? How the difference between both of them, the workflow between both of them, guys. Understood? Any doubt? No doubt. In auditions code grinder, now you could see that AP I call authorization request, AP I call in Zoom. Can you able to understand whether it is a normal OAuth workflow or like a Zoom meeting? Can you able to check that one by seeing the AP I call authorization request? No, by seeing it, you can able to see it in that notepad itself. What is the response type they have given? Second line starting response underscore type is equal to code and access. That means what will be if it is a response type is equal to code means, then we can able to see what is that grant type. They are using it. It is easy, guys. If you see the response type is equal to code, that means the response they are expecting. It is a code. That means it is an access code. That is the authorization code grant type. If you see the response type is equal to token, means that is a implicit, that is a normal OAuth workflow. Understood? if you see the response type is equal to code, because they are expecting the first API call. Response should be there as a code, not as a token. That is why they are putting that is, this is a syntax type. Response underscore type is equal to code means they are going to use the authorization code grant type, because after successful authentication on this particular first API call, they are expecting the code as a response, not as a token. If they put response type is equal to token means then they are expecting the token in the response after successful authentication in the first API call. That is what the second API, that is what the second kind of a grant type known as the implicit. Implicit, just copy the normal OAuth workflow, just put it the same thing. Implicit is considered as a, or also known as normal OAuth workflow. Implicit is also called as a normal OAuth workflow. We can able to see why implicit is less secure than the OAuth authentication code grant type, because after successful authentication, anyone can able to see what is there in the token. Anyone can able to see the token in the browser. That is why it is considered as a less secure than the auth authentication code grant type. And then you can ask me why implicit then. You can ask me the question. Here, Karthik, you are saying that implicit is less secure than the auth. Less secure than the auth authentication code grant type. Then why they are using the implicit? Why not using the auth authentication code grant type? That will be the good question. That means there is a concept called client secret in the auth. Client secret in the auth. Client secret means like one password, we will be using it. One password, we will be using it. It's like a secret key. It is like a secret key in the OAuth we will be using. We will be using it in the authentication code, client credentials, and then raw OPC. In authentication code grant type, it's optional only. It is optional because the access code we are using. That is, it makes the call as a more secure. Why client secret we will be using it means it is in order to make the OAuth a little bit extra security. That's why we will be using the client secret. Authentication code grant type. It's optional to use the client secret. But if you are using the client secret in the authentication code, grant type means in the payload. In the first step and in the second step, we are passing client ID redirect URI. In the second step, we are passing the code in the API call. You need to pass the client secret also as a mandatory. Authentication code grant type, either you can ignore the client secret. If you use it, you need to definitely use it in the API call, or else the Ping parent won't accept it. But if you are using it, since the second API call is in the backend in authentication code grant, that is little bit disadvantageous state. The second API call is there. In order to do the second API call, the code will get stored in the backend of the browser. The code will get stored in the backend of the browser. If the hacker try to get the code, they may try to get into the token also. Within 60 seconds. It's not possible only, but there are like some sophisticated hackers like now. There are like some sophisticated hackers. They may try to hack the code and then they will try to get the token answer. That is why this kind of a complicated process. Why this kind of a complicated process for the single page application using the JavaScript. That is why they introduced another protocol called implicit. But what happens? Implicit in a course of time, implicit become a less secure. Because of that, the token is, first of all, they introduced that authorization code grant type only. But in the course of time, what happened? There is an issue with little bit small issue in the authorization code grant type. But they have, That's why they introduced, in order to overcome that authorization core grant type, they introduced the implicit grant type to create a token in the first call itself. But in the course of time, that creating the token in the first step itself become an issue, and then it makes sense that authorization core grant type is, more secure than the implicit. But still, the time before they analyze this kind of a issue with the implicit and as well as authorization core grant type, all the applications started using the authorization core grant type and as well as the implicit. 60% of the OAuth configuration goes with the authorization core grant type, to 40% of the application is going with the implicit. Later, only they found out it's less secure than the OAuth. They thought to solve the issue for the authorization core grant type, but it became an issue with the implicit itself. It's become a less secure than the authorization core grant type. Now they have given an update after 17 years. After 17 to 18 years, they given an update like 2.2 to 2.1. They are going to remove the implicit feature action. This feature is the implicit they are going to remove in the OAuth 2.1. That is why the OAuth 2.1 is getting delayed. I was mentioning because of the implicit flow, only because lot of organizations still using the implicit grant type. Even I'm also working in that. Migrating from implicit, changing from implicit to the authorization core grant type only. Still, all the organization around the world which is using not only the Ping Fellow tool, other single sign-on tools also, which is using the OAuth. They are migrating from implicit to the authorization core grant type. Maybe in 2020, 2024, early 2024, late 2023, definitely the implicit will get shut down. They are going to decommission, they are going to stop the service of the implicit. In future implicit, it won't be there, but we will see it. We will see the workflow, we will see the practical everything. We will see it because till now the implicit still there. They introduced the implicit to solve the issue for authorization core grant type, but it became the implicit itself. It became an issue. Anyone, even in interview, they are asking, it means what is the difference between implicit and authorization? Core grant type means implicit is a less secure way of doing the OAuth. Authorization core is more secure than the implicit, and then it is a 3-step process. Implicit is a 2-step process. 3 FPA calls will be done in the authorization core, 2 FPA call in the implicit. Here, it is not going to create a token directly in implicit. It is going to create a token directly that is considered as a less secured. These are the difference between the authorization core grant type and then the implicit grant type. Just copy that normal water flow and put it there in the implicit. Understood the difference, guys? These two. Now you can ask me the question here, Karthik. Now you are saying implicit is going to decommission. Then what is the replacement for the authorization core grant type with authorization core grant type disadvantage? Now you need to ask me that question. There is a bug. Is there in authorization core? It is not a bug. Basically, it is a disadvantage. Is there in is there in that authorization core grant type? Then what you are saying, that implicit is also going to decommission. Then what will be the replacement for that authorization core grant type? There is another grant type they have introduced. They have introduced another grant type called authorization core grant type with the PKC method. Authorization core grant type with the PKC method. It is a PKC method is an extension to the authorization core grant type. You need to use it in a combination with the authorization core grant type only. That makes authorization core grant type is the most secured way of doing the what not like a SAML one, not secured like a SAML one. It is a little bit like, like from the previous version. Now the auth, like it is like more secure than the previous one, but not like a secured like a SAL. Maybe in Fusion, definitely it will come like secured, like a SAML. That will also see it. This authorization core grant type with the PKC method. They have given an update to the Auth 2.2 protocol itself because in 2.1 they are going to remove the implicit. If they remove it directly, then it will give a problem. We need to replace. That is why they give an update to 2.2 itself, the new grant type, authorization core grant type with the PKC methods already introduced in the 2.2. 6 months before, I think like nearly 6 months or 8 months before, only they have introduced that PKC method in the Ping Federate. In our Ping Federate, they have introduced 6 to 8 months before. Only they have introduced. Nowadays, I am using that instead of implicit. I am using the authorization core grant type with the PKC. We will also the PKC method also. We will see it authorization core grant type with the PKCE method. Understood. Here after the core grant type, just put additional grant types. After the core grant type, just put additional grant types there. Can you after the AUPC, can you put that? Now, you just put the additional grant types. Don't put it in the normal grant types. Just type additional. No, not the fifth one. Just come out of the fifth one. Additional grant types. First one, PKC method authorization core grant type with the PKCE method. Second one is repressed token grant type. This repressed token grant type we will also see repressed. A repressed token grant type. The third one is access token validation. This is the one which is used for validate the token. Access token validation. This is the one which is used for validating the token. The third step in the authorization core grant type. Second step in the implicit grant type. To validate, that is one AP call to validate the token. That is the third one additional grant type. That is what? Access token validation. Understood, the first four grant type will be considered as a normal user grant type. Nowadays, we are all using that one. Additional grant type. That is also will be. We cannot be able to use it in a separate way. We need to use it in a combination with other core. Understood. Like PKCE, you need to use it with the authorization core grant type with the PKCE method. Repressed token, you need to use it with the authorization core grant type or authorization core grant type or OPC. Repressed token, it won't work with the implicit or client connection. Only works with the AOPC and then the authorization core grant type. And then access token validation you need to. Obviously it's a validation. You need to use to validate the authorization core grant type, client ID or implicit client ID or like a RAOPC client ID. It won't work with the client credentials, only other three. Understood. Understood, guys. Whatever we discussed today, can you copy this one and can you put it in the chat anywhere that you can share it with yourself? The steps. There are two other grant types are there. That is the client credentials. We will see theoretical and then OPC. We will see. Maybe on Monday, we will see the other two grant types and then we will directly go and configure the all I mean configure the OAuth, and then we will start working on that practical session for the OAuth. Each day we will try to complete one grant type. First of all, we will see the authorization core granted. In one day itself, we can able to complete the practical session for implicit client currency or OPC. Only authorization core grant type will take some time to validate and do the practical. Other three is a simple one. One is authorization core grant type. Will take time to do the practical and test it. And then like implicit or client credentials or OPC, it won't take that much time. We can do it within half an hour itself. Understood whatever we discussed today? I know it's a huge topic we discussed. It's a oath. I have explained you with the steps. Just follow the steps again, refer the recording again. If you have any issue, you can also refer that diagrammatic representation in the document also. Everyone, please download the document and then study the oath. If you have any questions, make a note of it. You can ask me on Monday. We will continue with the client credentials and then the ROPC. Then we will go with the configure this particular oath. Understood. This will be more interesting, guys, when we do the practical way. It will be more interesting to do the practical. Like they are all in different AP calls. We will be testing it. Please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@therightuptalk.com.